Welcome in as we go one-on-one, Bulldawg Illustrated with yours truly, Jeff Dantzler. It is indeed an honor to have one of my favorite dogs of all time, my good friend, number 12, who's still got phenomenal hair, the one and only John Lastinger. John, thank you so much for taking time. I know you're busy. I appreciate you visiting with us. So kind of catch everybody up to date with the life of a Georgia legend, with you and your wife and your children and your job and everything. You got a lot of stuff going on, my friend.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you having me. Yeah, to say that I'm a legend would be stretching it a little bit. Certainly not that. People's memory aren't very good, but no, I'm great. I live down in my hometown of Valdosta, Georgia. I'm just about to finish my 28th year in the brokerage business. I work for Stiefel, and of course, my wife Suzanne and I have just June 24th was 31 years of marriage. How she's put up with me for that long is a miracle. And then my daughter, Lindsay Lastinger Sterry, lives down in Tampa, and she is one of the biggest bulldogs in Tampa. And doesn't like all the gators around there, but she's a physical therapist down there, and married to Ed Sterry, a young man from Watford, England, and he's a big Watford Hornet fan. So I'm getting caught up on the Premier League soccer. And then my son Jake works here in Valdosta for Scruggs Concrete, and was going to get married. Well, he's still getting married August the 1st, but we had to make some radical changes. He's now getting married. We're having a little family ceremony here in Valdosta. He went to the University of Mississippi, so he's an Ole Miss grad, and we were going to have the wedding in Oxford, which would have been a blast, but he and his fiancee Davis Bell we're gonna do it here. So maybe a recreation next year. But I'm good. So thanks for having me.
No, John, I really appreciate it. And again, I think back, like for me, I was so blessed when I was coming up 80 through 83. I was 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that is right in the hot spot. And I think for all of us, when we're kids into our teen years, those are always your fondest sports memories. So I was right there for the glory days, and for what we accomplished. And obviously, you were such a huge part of that. Kind of take us through the memories. And I would imagine, obviously all the victories were great. The 11-0 season, an SEC title, the Cotton Bowl championship, those wins over Florida and Tech. But just the camaraderie, the friendships that all you guys developed and have kept going. Is that just as big as the victories, John?
Well, I think that, it's all important. I think the friendships, are what really the lasting part of it that are so special. And that's why going to the University of Georgia, growing up in the state of Georgia, going there, being so fortunate to come there when we had so many great athletes that decided to come there as well. And then, to make a great run, I was a freshman in 1979. We weren't very good. Conference-wise, we were pretty good. We weren't very good overall, 6-5. But that senior class heading into 1980, I think was great for us. Kind of set the pace. Of course, 1980 was a magical year with Herschel coming in. But that senior class was special, and I really felt like they kind of paved the way for us, and we kind of took that and carried it over into 81 and 82 and 83. So. But yeah, it's just I feel very blessed to have taken so many friendships and relationships back, from the University of Georgia.
John, that senior class in 80, which was so special, how much did that help set the tone for you guys? Because our senior class at 83 obviously was incredibly special. Did you guys learn from a leadership perspective a lot from that group in 80?
I don't think there's any question. I think we learned accountability, and just to hold people accountable in summer workouts, spring practices, football practices, just to really work hard. That the senior class of 1980 was not real talented. There are a lot of, very few guys played beyond college, but they just really they were not going to be denied. They were just so. just worked so hard. That old saying that, luck is the definition of hard work when hard work meets opportunity. And they were kind of the epitome of that. And I think so we took that intangible, and then, fortunately the class, our graduating class had some really good football players. And, we had some guys that played in the NFL and the USFL following college.
And when you think about it too, all the wins we had, all those special moments, and there were so many dramatic victories in there. And John, when I think about some of your great moments, the ones that come to mind, you played big on the road. You played big when the chips were down. Your 3-touchdown game at Kentucky in '82. You played great at Mississippi State and threw a perfect strike there to the late Kevin Harris. And I know that was very sad, and that he recently passed away, and obviously directing the 99-yard drive against the Gators, and then the Cotton Bowl run against Texas. I always joke with our buddy Kevin Butler, those two 10-9 wins in '83. Were you feeling the most pressure then? For God's sakes, whatever you do, don't miss the PAT.
Yeah, I know it. I mean, that's of course, I didn't never think Kevin. I was more worried about my roommate Jimmy Harrell dropping the snap, than I was in fumbling, and then Kevin missing the extra point. But yeah, no, you bring a point. As we've gotten older, to get the news last week that Kevin Harris passed away, who made some great catches in the Sugar Bowl, had a touchdown pass against Mississippi State in '82. So and then that got played defensive back in '84. I mean, so then we're talking the Southeastern Conference here. So pretty special athlete, and an even better person. So yeah, it was just hard to get that news and see it. But and I wasn't aware Kevin's son Quentin Harris played quarterback at Duke last year. And gosh, you need to go to YouTube and watch him. As a tribute to Kevin, because that kid's a really good player and apparently a special young man.
John, what are the biggest lessons you got out of sports? You were also a tremendous baseball player in high school, obviously a great football player. And so what are some of the biggest things, again, beyond the winning, beyond the success that sports and football in particular has meant to you and taught you?
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier, accountability, I think, is certainly in any team sport. But just perseverance and discipline. Growing up here in Valdosta, and obviously back then, Valdosta High football was very special, and got to play with Buck Bellew, great player, and so that was Valdosta High football had been down a little bit, and we kind of got it back on track. Lost the state championship in Athens on '77 to Clark Central on a cold night against Jim Bob Harris, your buddy, I'm sure. But anyway, no, but had a great baseball program, won the state in 1978. And, but, I think all of those things just teach, discipline, accountability, and again, for me, perseverance, because when I got to the University of Georgia, I was, I went through some knee injuries and was, I don't know. I think I was right there, could have kind of just given up and said, I'm just going to be a student. But I just, I felt like I had instilled in me, that drive to keep it going. And fortunately I did. And fortunately it all worked out.
Well, John, I'm also fortunate to be friends with your brother, Brad, who's a tremendous part of the program here and a great Bulldog. And I know what a great influence your late father, the great Johnny B. Lastinger was. And I loved it, too, in his obituary where it said, Johnny B. Lastinger loved the Georgia Bulldogs, the Valdosta Wildcats, and the Valdosta Country Club. God bless him. And I know what a great influence he was on both of you boys. Yeah,
he missed him every day. And he was, my dad had some athletic ability. People always laugh and say that I always got my athletic ability from my mother, who was a really good high school basketball player back in the day. And she's very competitive. But dad wasn't a bad athlete, but dad was a tremendous sports fan. And that's why it was so much fun to be around. And he loved a good, funny story. But, the old Valdosta Dodgers I guess the old Georgia Florida League many years ago had a farm team here. And so he was a huge Brooklyn Dodger fan growing up. And of course they moved to Los Angeles. And he still followed them to this day. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, and when the Dodgers showed up to play the Braves were terrible, but the Dodgers were not. We were going, we were going up there. We stayed at the hotel where the Dodgers stayed. I got Sandy Koufax's autograph. I got Walter Austin. I mean, all of those guys. So we went for years and years. He loved the LA Dodgers. He sure did.
John, what was for you? What was the deciding factor between football and baseball?
Football came first. I mean, my senior year, football was in the fall, and it's and I was recruited, by Alabama. I mean, a number of schools, but I kind of narrowed it down to Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia. And when Buck signed the year before, Coach Dooley flipped his scholarship over and wrote it, a handwritten note that he had permission to play baseball in the spring. I don't think Coach Dooley loved that idea, but he let him do it. And, and I didn't get it written into my scholarship. I mean, I kind of thought to myself, I might can play baseball, but I would have never played football. I would have never gotten the opportunity to actually get on the field and play if I had played. Spring practice turned out to be so important for me. So I missed baseball and would have loved to have played it. But, as far as me ever having any success or excelling on the football field was really due to spring football practice. And, playing baseball, I would have never had a spring football. So I don't think I'd ever play.
As opposed to your former roommate, our good friend who was the specialist, the return specialist, the holder, and a heck of a shortstop too. Any good semi-clean Jimmy Harrell stories for us?
Oh, Jimmy, he's old Geechee from Summerville, South Carolina. He's just tenacious little athlete. In '84 he ran a punt back against Kentucky, and of course I had graduated, so I wasn't. And the game was in Lexington. I was watching it on TV, and I always kid him. I said, Harold, you caught that dadgum punt, and started running, and I got up and went and got a beer, and I came back, and you were still running. So of course he did score, but and. Believe me, Jimmy will turn it around on me pretty good too. So, we have a lot of fun with that.
You guys were such a great group. And, of course, you were both so important. We mentioned Kevin earlier too, and that great win over Texas, which is certainly one of the biggest in Georgia history. And I think that game in itself, you talk about perseverance. We just hung around. And then we finally had something good happen. But in sports, and my goodness, whether I'm working a football, baseball, basketball, soccer game, you name it, it's one thing to get a break, but it's another thing to cash in on it. And I've got to think for you guys, such a great team, and we were hanging, and we finally had that little opening. There was no way that team wasn't going to cash in on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's that old story, and you see it in sports, the team that was probably the underdog team, all just kind of keeps hanging around. And, I'm sure at some point there was probably some Texas fans across the way that are going, I don't like where this is going, and it's just the ultimate defensive struggle, a lot of 3 and outs. I don't know. We punted a million times and they did too, but I always say our defense was really, really good that day. And, but, got that opportunity and then we had the right play call on and then were able to get it in the end zone.
That 82 team, what's so special about that great 11-0 regular season is that we trailed in 7 of those 11 games. And I think about that comeback at Mississippi State. Again, you played great there. I think Kentucky was winless or maybe had 1 win, and you threw the 3 TDs that night. And I've got to think for you as well, though, that win at Auburn to make it 3 straight SEC titles and keep us number 1 with everything on the line. That's got to be at the top of your list.
Yeah, that was a great special day, to fall behind there and then have a great drive in the fourth quarter to win it. That certainly meant a lot. Kentucky, yeah, you're right. I mean, they're terrible, but also we were found, I think we may have trailed 14-0 before we woke up there. But yeah, I mean, it just, you don't really think so much about that. I mean, falling behind, but it's, again, more of that, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that intangible that we just keep battling and do what we do, and things took over.
John, I've been honored to be compared to you in one and only one way on one of our big group texts that we're both a part of. your nickname is Dark Cloud. And for me growing up, as I say, a child of Dooley and Munson, when it comes to the Dawgs, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're just hunker down means hang on, right? You're just,
JD, we're the smartest ones of the whole bunch. If you expect the worst and the worst happens, you are expecting it. So anything remotely better is a positive. Why wouldn't more people be that way?
Set the bar low. That's what I've always said. But it's so funny. But I don't know, for you growing up a huge Georgia fan, I always tell people, I'm like, well, I'm listening to the Mighty Munson interview Coach Dooley before the game. And, Vince, how are we going to block Vanderbilt? I have no idea. I'm like, my God, we're ranked number 2 in the country. We're not even going to beat Vanderbilt. So for those of us, I guess it was just like the shock treatment that we all got at a very young age. So I do love it with one of my favorite Bulldogs. I am compared to you favorably in one way. We're those natural born Munson Dooley pessimists.
I'm never going to change, JD. I'm never changing, all right?
So how about just a couple last things there, John? I know how happy you are with where the program is right now, as all of us old dogs are, with Kirby and Mary Beth being here. And there's just so much to be said. Number one, he's a great coach. He's a great recruiter. He's a great guy. It's that authenticity. They've wanted to be here. This is the job he's wanted. He wants to be here forever. And, his goal is the same as ours. And you were part of our greatest. He wants Georgia to be the best football program in the country. And I think that's awesome.
Couldn't agree more. I think, it just feels like a natural fit. He's a hard worker, hard recruiter, and he's not perfect yet. I mean, he's learning. I think he's still learning as a head coach, and I think that, but yeah, man, you got to just got to like he's elevated the program, and that's what we wanted. We felt like we got to get relevant again, and I think we're getting relevant.
Jeff, what do you miss most about your playing days?
Oh, golly, that's hard to say. It's been a long time. I mean, the excitement of just coming out on the field with Georgia fans was, and then more in the camaraderie, McWhorter Hall with your teammates, and just the time spent, relationships developed. I mean, I think those are, they still last today. So that's, I think that's just a special part of it.
How about for you, as you became a veteran? I think another one of our buddies who had a great career at Georgia, a young freshman your senior year named David Dukes that you got to mentor, because so much of college football and sustaining success, it's those heir apparents. You've got to have those next guys.
Yeah, and I mean, go look at 1984. I mean, people say, well, I don't really remember David Dukes. Go to 1984. He played really, really well at quarterback for us. I mean, go watch the Kentucky game. The Vanderbilt game, 62-35. I mean, the David Dukes could play some football now and came from a great family, and he's just cut from the same cloth as the rest of us. Maybe not the most talented, but understood what it took to win, to do things right, to be accountable.
There's so many athletes now. Just want to get your perspective. And I know recruiting is so tough, and everybody's getting good players. I think one of the things that Kirby has identified, though, is you want great football players who have that competitive instinct. Then they're great athletes as well. And I think sometimes you'll see teams miss on guys. They might go after, say, the athlete first, who might not have that heart or that real the football savvy to it. Have you noticed a difference in that?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think, we've had a few, and I'm not that close to it now, but I mean, we have some situations now where, some 5-star commits or 4-star, and all the next thing you know, he's no longer coming to us anymore, and I think a lot of times Kirby's got a standard about what he expects, and he wants them to be good teammates, and he wants them to appreciate the University of Georgia. I mean, I know it's a different era now, and kids are really looking to get to the league and that type of thing, far more so than back when we were there. But I do think there's some truth to that. I mean, I think Kirby is very attentive to, will this young man be a good teammate? And I think it's you're right. It's so very important, because it just takes a little tiny bit of dissension, and all of a sudden, that turns into a big crack, and it can ruin a football season for you if you're not careful.
And that's really a sixth sense as a coach. I know Coach Dooley had that as well, John. You have a couple of good Coach Dooley stories for us?
No. He just, I mean, that's the thing I wish people could see. Coach Dooley, that dry sense of humor, was really, I mean, he really said a lot of funny things. Sometimes you can't always repeat what he said, but, he just, he had that great ability to do that. I always appreciated my senior year when, and I started against UCLA, didn't play all that well. We won the game, and then we went to Clemson and tied Clemson. I didn't play particularly well, and he called me in his office on Monday morning and said, "Hey, let's talk about this quarterback situation." And I told him, I said, "Coach, I think Todd Williams deserves to start." I said, I don't like it, but I think it's probably best for the team." And we agreed, and so I appreciated him, letting me have my say. But then when I went out there, he called my parents and talked to them about it, and he certainly didn't have to do that. And I mean, I just, always appreciated that. He's a tough coach, and you had to earn his respect. But once you earned it, he'll fight for you until the bitter end. So, good guy.
And you got in that South Carolina game, obviously, and started the rest of the way. And the rest is history. One of my brief, this is about you, John, one of my brief Coach Dooley stories. I hit one of the worst golf shots of my life while he was watching the old Dooley Posh. And of course, I wanted to hit a great shot with Coach watching. I was so humiliated. He said, "Jeff, don't worry about it. That means you're spending more of your time at work and not slacking off and playing golf all the time." So he had this ability, because he knew I was embarrassed. I was about 20, 21 years old. He had this ability to lift you up when you were down, but also, as I'm sure you could recall, he wouldn't let you get too high either.
Oh, no. Yeah, he was all business. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, he kind of set a standard, and you knew it, and he didn't. I mean, golly, he didn't put up with a lot of extracurricular. I mean, that was his generation, and it was still going on, when he was coaching us. So, and I mean, much appreciated. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I mean, it's a little different today. Now, I will say that. I mean, I do think, Kirby is a more disciplinarian than maybe the previous guy, who I wasn't opposed to him, but I think Martin Rick allowed other things to take place on the field, celebrations and, a little more undisciplined play that Coach Dooley simply would not have tolerated.
I think Kirby's all about walking the walk, and that's it. There were times in the past I felt we were more about the talking than the walking. I agree. John, kind of one last thing, just sports is a big picture. I think it's a great release. It's a great distraction. And I think more than anything, especially for you guys who had that God-given ability and the dedication to play, and then to play at an extremely high level. I think sports is a great unifier. It brings people together. That's one of the biggest things to me, why it's so important to get it back going again as soon as we can.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. Back when we first started some of the riots and so forth, and they in Atlanta, they went and vandalized the College Football Hall of Fame. And I just thought, if you think about college football and what it does and brings people together, and it transcends race, and I'm like, why would they, if any of those people had stopped to given that any thought, do you think maybe that's not what we want to do? That's not the statement we need to make. And I agree 100%. I think it's, I mean, I'm sure we probably got, miles and miles to go to keep improving race relations. But I do think that sports is a major player. Any sport you want to say that brings people together, fans, players, to work, to be in unity, in harmony, and go forward. So yes, absolutely. And it's, we need it. And I hope I know we're dealing with an awful lot this year, but golly, we really need to get it back and get it back as close to normal as we can get it.
I agree with you 100%. Well, number 12, the great John Lastinger. We could go on and on and on. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy, and you've always been one of my favorites. Really, really can't thank you enough for being with us today, John.
Appreciate it, JD. Appreciate it. I know you're at the bottom of the barrel when you're calling me, so go Dawgs.
All right. Our quarterback, number 12, the great John Lastinger. I'm Jeff Dantzler. Thanks to our producer, Greg Poole. Thanks for watching. See you next week. One-on-one right here on Bulldawg Illustrated.